Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. Noah that she was pregnant with his child, a confession that seemed to hang in the air with the weight of 1,000 unsaid words, reverberating through the walls of the Chancellor Mansion and echoing into the corridors of every life connected to theirs, because in this city of secrets, betrayals, and high-stakes emotions, nothing was ever simple, and yet everything was about to change. Noah, who had spent weeks grappling with the tumultuous aftermath of the revelation that Ali's fate was uncertain and his heart had been battered and bruised by Jack's manipulations, found himself frozen, caught between disbelief and an overwhelming surge of protective instinct, while Sienna's eyes, wide and searching, bore into his, silently begging for understanding, for support, for a love that had always been complicated, but now demanded a level of courage he hadn't thought he possessed. And yet, even as he opened his mouth to speak, the words caught in his throat, trapped beneath a torrent of emotions too vast to contain, because the reality of a child meant responsibilities, decisions, and life-altering changes that neither of them had anticipated when their lives had collided in such an unpredictable, fateful way. And just as Noah struggled to find his voice, Matt, standing nearby with a stoic expression that masked the storm raging behind his eyes, listened intently, weighing every syllable, every nuance of the revelation, because Matt had always prided himself on being a man of action, of clarity, of decisive judgment. Yet this news struck at the very core of his convictions, forcing him to confront questions about loyalty, love, family, and the intricate web of alliances and betrayals that had defined his every step in Genoa City, from business dealings that could make or break legacies to personal relationships that had left scars deeper than any boardroom battle could inflict. And as the silence stretched between them, Sienna's hand instinctively cradled her growing belly, a tangible, undeniable symbol of the life that now connected them in ways that no argument, no secret, no misstep could undo, and the tension in the room became almost unbearable, the air thick with anticipation, dread, and the faintest glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, amidst all the chaos, there could be a chance for something pure, something untainted, something real, because for Noah, the prospect of fatherhood was both terrifying and exhilarating, conjuring memories of loss, regret, and longing, yet also awakening a dormant sense of purpose, a chance to do right by a child who, through no fault of their own, would become the center of his world. And as Matt finally cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the charged silence like a knife, Sienna and Noah turned toward him, hearts pounding, bracing for the verdict that would ripple through their lives, because Matt's decisions had always carried weight, and in this moment, it felt as though the fate of not just two people but an entire family rested on his shoulders, and with a calm that belied the gravity of the situation, Matt spoke, his words deliberate, measured, and yet tinged with a vulnerability that few had ever witnessed, admitting that while the news was unexpected and the path ahead uncertain, he recognized the undeniable bond between Noah and Sienna and the undeniable truth that a child's life was a sacred responsibility that could not be ignored, and in that instant, the room seemed to hold its collective breath as Matt, in a move that shocked everyone, including himself, made a decision that defied expectations, choosing compassion over conflict, understanding over judgment, and in doing so, altering the course of their intertwined destinies forever, because Genoa City was a place where drama was currency, secrets were weapons, and love was a battlefield. Yet in that fragile, fleeting moment, there was a glimmer of hope, a fleeting sense that amidst betrayal, danger, and heartbreak, something genuine and life-affirming could emerge, something that would bind them together, not with chains of obligation or fear, but with the fragile, yet unbreakable, threads of family, love, and redemption. And as Sienna's tears fell freely, and Noah wrapped her in an embrace that spoke of protection, devotion, and a fierce, unwavering love, the two of them knew that the road ahead would be fraught with obstacles, challenges, and the inevitable interference of those who would seek to control or manipulate, because in Genoa City, peace was fleeting, happiness was temporary, and the past had a way of crashing into the present with brutal force. Yet despite all of that, in that intimate, quiet moment, there was a promise, a silent agreement that they would face whatever came together, fortified by the life growing within Sienna, a life that symbolized hope, resilience, and the possibility of new beginnings in a city that had long been defined by endings, betrayals, and heartbreak. And as Matt watched them, a complex mixture of relief, pride, and a touch of disbelief washing over him, he understood that while he could not shield them from every storm, he could, at least, give them the blessing of his support, and that gesture, small as it seemed to the world, carried immense weight, because in the grand tapestry of their lives, it was these moments of courage, love, and empathy that would define them far more than the conflicts, manipulations, or corporate battles that had dominated their days. And as the trio stood there, the gravity of the moment settling into their hearts, each one silently acknowledging the journey ahead, the unknown challenges, and the uncertain outcomes, there was an undeniable truth that resonated through every fiber of their being, that life, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, was about to change forever. And while fear, doubt, and jealousy would inevitably rear their heads, there would also be laughter, joy, and moments of pure, unadulterated happiness, because the birth of a child was a miracle in itself, a symbol of hope, a testament to love, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was light to be found. And as Noah kissed Sienna's forehead, whispering promises he intended to keep, and Matt nodded, offering the unspoken vow of protection, guidance, and acceptance, the city outside seemed to pause, as if acknowledging that a new chapter had begun, one that would challenge them, shape them, and ultimately reveal the strength of their hearts in ways they could not yet imagine. And in that charged, emotionally rich moment, every secret, every betrayal, every heartbreak of the past seemed to fade just enough to make room for the possibility of healing, growth, and a future that, while uncertain, was theirs to claim. Because in Genoa City, the only certainty was that nothing was ever simple. Yet amidst the chaos, love found a way to endure, to persist, and to transform lives in ways that were as unexpected as they were extraordinary. And as the sun set beyond the skyline, casting long shadows across the mansion, Sienna rested her head against Noah's chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, while Matt lingered nearby, silently acknowledging that sometimes the most surprising decisions, the ones that defied logic or expectation, were the ones that carried the greatest impact. And in that quiet, profound realization, a new story began to unfold, one that promised tears, triumphs, heartbreaks, and moments of pure, undeniable joy, because that was the essence of the young and the restless, a city where every revelation set off a chain reaction, every decision shaped destinies, and every heartbeat mattered more than anyone could ever imagine. And yet, even as the initial shock of Sienna's confession began to settle, a ripple of unease began to creep into the room, subtle at first but growing in intensity, because in Genoa City, news like this never stayed private for long, and the mere thought of how others would react, Victor, Nikki, Sharon, and even Jack, sent shivers down Noah's spine. Knowing that every ally could become an adversary, and every friendly face could hide judgment, skepticism, or worse, schemes that would turn their fragile moment of unity into chaos. And as he held Sienna closer, he felt the weight of not only the life she carried but the entire web of relationships and obligations that threatened to pull them apart at every turn, because being a father in this city meant navigating treacherous waters, making decisions that could affect empires, and standing firm against manipulations and power plays that had been a constant part of his life since the very beginning. And Sienna, sensing the storm brewing within him, pressed her hand against his chest, feeling the tension in his muscles, the rapid beat of his heart, the hesitation in his words, and silently, without uttering a single syllable, she conveyed her own fears, her hopes, and her determination to face whatever came with courage, knowing that while the path ahead was uncertain, she would not face it alone, because Noah's presence was a shield as much as a promise, a tangible reminder that despite mistakes, betrayals, and past regrets. There was still love that could endure, adapt, and protect, and in that realization, a small, fragile spark of hope ignited within her, one that whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, amidst the endless cycles of deceit, heartbreak, and manipulation, they could carve out a moment of happiness, a fleeting sanctuary of peace, even if only temporary, because Genoa City had a way of testing even the strongest hearts. And every revelation, every pregnancy, every secret held the power to ignite conflict as easily as it could inspire unity. Meanwhile, Matt, still standing in the corner, could not shake the gnawing unease that had settled over him, the kind of instinctual worry that comes not from fear of the obvious, but from a deep, intuitive understanding that life in Genoa City rarely allowed for smooth paths, and while he had made his surprising decision in support of Noah and Sienna, he could not ignore the potential fallout, the subtle ripple effects that might cascade through the lives of everyone involved, because every choice in this city had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate moment, touching businesses, families, and the fragile alliances that kept even the most volatile figures at least marginally in check. And as he watched Noah cradle Sienna, he thought of all the moments that had led to this. The betrayals, the alliances, the boardroom battles, the secrets kept in the dark, and the lives broken or built in their wake. And he realized that despite his carefully constructed image of control and composure, he, too, was caught in the unpredictability of emotion, the raw, uncontainable power of love and responsibility. And in that moment, he silently promised himself that he would do whatever it took to protect them, because the alternative, a child born into a world of conflict, mistrust, and danger, was unthinkable. And perhaps, he reflected, it was moments like these, unpredictable and human, that reminded him why he had endured the countless betrayals and deceptions of Genoa City in the first place, because sometimes, even amidst chaos, there were moments that demanded courage, honesty, and above all, compassion. And while the city outside their walls would never pause for such moments, inside, they could allow themselves the fragile grace of hope. Of course, no dramatic revelation in Genoa City could ever remain isolated, and as the hours ticked by, whispers began to circulate among those who sensed, suspected, or outright knew of Sienna's news, because the city had a way of amplifying even the smallest secret into a spectacle of judgment, speculation, and opportunism, and Noah, acutely aware of this, felt a tension in his chest, a blend of protectiveness and dread, knowing that once the word spread, they would face scrutiny from all directions, from concerned friends, from opportunistic enemies, from family members who had always believed that controlling the lives of those around them was a duty rather than a choice, and the thought made him grind his teeth, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety that had plagued him through years of corporate scheming, personal betrayals, and life-altering confrontations. Yet unlike past situations, this was different. This was personal, intimate, and irrevocable, because a child was not a business deal, not a negotiation, not a chess piece in someone else's game. It was a life, fragile, innocent, and entirely dependent on the choices of those around it, and the enormity of that responsibility bore down on him in a way that left no room for error, hesitation, or distraction. And as he looked down at Sienna, her face pale but resolute, her eyes gleaming with determination, he realized that he would move heaven and earth to ensure that she and their child were safe, loved, and protected no matter the cost, because if there was one thing Genoa City had taught him, it was that loyalty, courage, and love were the only currencies that mattered when everything else threatened to collapse around you. Sienna, for her part, wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions, her mind spinning with the implications of her pregnancy, the realization that her life was forever altered, that Noah's love, Matt's decision, and the reactions of everyone around them would shape not only her present but her future, and the life of the child growing within her, because unlike many of the conflicts she had faced before, this was permanent, tangible, and impossible to ignore. And yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was a quiet, stubborn sense of hope, a belief that perhaps this child could be the catalyst for change, healing, and reconciliation in ways that no confrontation or ultimatum ever could. And as she let herself imagine the possibilities, moments of laughter, tenderness, and unshakable family bonds, she felt a strength she had not known she possessed, a courage born of love and necessity. And as she rested her head against Noah's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, she felt a grounding sense of certainty that despite the chaos outside, they could face whatever came together, because love, in its truest, rawest form, was a force unlike any other, and it demanded action, protection, and an unwavering commitment that neither betrayal, manipulation, nor ambition could override. And as the days unfolded, the reality of their situation became impossible to ignore, because Genoa City, ever vigilant, ever scheming, began to stir in response to the news, with each character poised to react in ways that were equal parts selfish, strategic, and unpredictable, and Noah and Sienna, caught in the eye of the storm, had to navigate not only their own emotions, but the inevitable interference of family, friends, and enemies who would not allow such a revelation to exist in peace. From Victor, whose instincts to control and manipulate were as strong as his protective instincts for those he considered family, to Nikki, whose moral compass and maternal instincts would inevitably clash with secrecy and strategy, to Sharon, whose empathy could offer solace or complicate matters depending on how she chose to act, to Jack, who thrived on chaos, whose interventions could either sabotage or inadvertently support, and to Matt, whose watchful eye and carefully measured actions sought to mediate the coming storm, all converging in a high-stakes drama where every word, glance, and decision carried consequences far beyond the immediate moment. And as they confronted each challenge, their strength, love, and commitment were tested in ways that demanded courage, patience, and unflinching resolve. Because in Genoa City, happiness was never simple, peace was fleeting, and every decision, no matter how compassionate or calculated, had the power to ignite conflict, reveal secrets, and reshape lives forever. And through it all, the growing life inside Sienna remained a silent witness, a symbol of hope, resilience, and the promise of a future where love could prevail, if only they had the strength to protect it. As the days pressed on, the tension in Genoa City became almost tangible, like a storm rolling silently over the skyline, each gust of wind carrying whispers, rumors, and the inevitable speculations about Sienna's pregnancy. And Noah, though determined to remain calm, felt the subtle pressure of every pair of eyes, every conversation, every passing glance that hinted at judgment or hidden agendas, because he knew that in this city, nothing remained secret for long, and what started as a private revelation between two people could quickly spiral into a spectacle of manipulation, alliances, and personal vendettas. And yet, despite the looming threat of interference, Noah refused to let fear dictate his actions, holding Sienna close, feeling the flutter of life growing within her, and drawing strength from the knowledge that, no matter what obstacles arose, they had each other, and that bond, fragile as it sometimes felt amidst betrayal and chaos, was stronger than any plot or scheme that could be thrown their way. And Sienna, in turn, discovered an inner resilience she hadn't fully acknowledged before, a courage rooted in maternal instinct, love for Noah, and a determination to safeguard the child she carried. And together, they began to navigate the precarious labyrinth of Genoa City, one fraught with the ever-present shadow of Victor, whose protective yet controlling nature could be as much a shield as a threat, and Nikki, whose emotional intelligence often clashed with strategic thinking, and Sharon, whose empathy and moral compass might guide or complicate the path forward, and even Jack, whose penchant for disruption meant that every victory, no matter how private, could be challenged, undermined, or manipulated for his own amusement. And through all of this, Matt remained a steady, if sometimes conflicted, pillar, offering guidance, support, and, at times, tough love, because he understood that the fragile balance between personal emotion and strategic Foresight was essential to ensure not only their immediate safety, but the long-term well-being of the child, and as the trio worked to forge a path forward, they discovered that trust, once broken, could be mended, alliances could shift in a heartbeat, and moments of tenderness and hope could exist even in a city built on secrets, betrayals, and relentless ambition. And through it all, the unborn child became a symbol, a beacon of possibility that challenged the cynical, power-driven world around them, reminding each of them that love, protection, and courage were forces capable of carving out space for joy, even amidst uncertainty, chaos, and the relentless drama that defined every corner of their lives. And as Noah held Sienna one evening,